His name was Anthony Picciotto, and they called him Tony Pitch. And I can't tell you what an effect that had, because whenever Tony came home from being on the road with Jimmy Dorsey, and he made some movies with the Three Stooges and Bud Abbott and Lou Costello, and he used to come home with all kinds of funny stories. But whenever Michael Tony came home for Christmas to visit the family, anybody in the band that didn't have a family, Tony dragged them home and they stayed at our house. So Danny Kent, the famous pianist, stayed with us, and there was always great music in the house. So my mother played classical piano. Her brother Tony played trumpet, Michael Tony Pitch. My father played trumpet, but he played real legit. He could read anything. If it was written on toilet paper and it was for trumpet, he could play it. And my uncle Armin, who was my father's brother, played great slide trombone. So I had all of that music being played around the house, in the family. My dad had a great record collection. He had all the Stan Kenton stuff. He absolutely loved Louis Armstrong. We had all the Benny Goodman sextet things with Charlie Christian, who I fell in love with. And I stayed home and played to all these great records. So by the time I left home, and my father was a great tutor, he'd come home sometimes and he'd say, "Hey, I found a record. I have this Mexican trumpet player. You've got to hear it. Listen, listen." And he put it on, and it was Rafael Mendez. And he'd say, listen to the tone. Listen to the way he plays. And from that day on, whenever I hear a horn player, and I'm 74 now, if he's not in tune, you can put a bag over his head as far as I'm concerned. I don't care how flashy he is, what he does, his technique. If he doesn't have a real trumpet, beautiful singing voice, hey, you know, he's not worth anything to me. So I got at that level, especially for horns. That was my vision. So I used to go into Boston, and the only place you could play in Boston was what they called the combat zone. And the combat zone is where all the hookers are, and all the people that were selling drugs, and it was the roughest area to be. And the hottest joint in town was the worst one, because Boston was a Navy town. Boston had a gazillion sailors. So the only bar that had live music 7 nights a week and Saturday and Sunday afternoons was a place called the Silver Dollar. And the Silver Dollar was half Navy and half redneck, out to lunch, who knows, whatever. So there were always fights in there. Always fights. Always some idiot, you know, being thrown up in the air, you know, and see how long they could get him for airtime and stuff. And then the club owners, if they say, "No, that's not bad enough, we're going to do something else," they brought in all black bands from Canada and from the Midwest that were really great bands. And a lot of those cats were dating white chicks. So the drama in this nightclub was one to behold. And that was my stomping grounds, I will put it that way. So I used to go in and sit in with the black bands on the backstage, and whenever I could. And they had some great bands in there. In fact, I'm trying to think of, there was a band called Little Randy and the Stompers, and they were out of Rhode Island. And Little Randy had, I think there were 8 guys in the band. It was tenor, baritone, trumpet, guitar, Hammond organ, drums. Oh, and Billy Osborne was playing drums. And Jeffrey Osborne, that's a world famous singer right now, that's his grandfather, I think. That's his father's father. So, yeah. So you were seeing people like that even before anybody knew who they were. But the musicianship was always there. Well, as it would happen, from sitting in Boston, there was a place right around the corner from the Silver Dollar that became world famous. If you punch any of these names up on Google, you'll see all the material you get come up. But there was a place called Izzy Orth's, and Izzy Orth's ran out-of-town bands, and they were running 6 nights a week and 2 matinees, kind of like the Silver Dollar. and they were running both black and white bands, and usually the black bands were from out of town. And one band that I really liked was led by a drummer named Shotgun Kelly. And Shotgun Kelly was from Pennsylvania. I used to be able to remember. Reading. He was from Reading. And Shotgun was probably one of the greatest show drummers that I had ever seen. He had a lot in common with Sonny Payne, because Sonny used to twirl his sticks and throw them behind his back and all that. Punch in Sonny Payne and look at some of the solos and you'll see an unbelievable drummer. Well, Shotgun was a lot like Sonny, because he'd get off the stage and he'd go out and play on the tables and chairs and the walls and all that in the middle of a drum solo. And he played the worst set of drums not only I have ever seen, but anybody in the audience has ever seen. He had a torn bed sheet, not even a bed sheet, a torn bed sheet on the front of the bass drum. Snare drums had holes in them. The tom-toms were, if you hit them real hard, they'd probably fall on the floor. The worst cymbals, they all were cracked. So, I mean, how this guy sounded great was, you know, I often wondered what the hell he would have sounded like with a great set of drums. Well, we were about to find out, because I used to go and sit in, and one day he said to me, "You sound pretty good. How about you sit in and play behind the singers, and so I can go out front?" So I said, "Sure, I'll do that." So I started playing behind the singers, and it was a big band. We had 4 singers out front, baritone, tenor, guitar, bass, and drums, no keyboards, and the 4 singers. So I'd go in there a couple times a week whenever I could run down, and definitely on weekends, and I'd play and sit in with the band behind the singers. And they were doing, you know, Since I Fell For You and all the tunes that everybody was singing then. So finally, after about a week or two of this, Shotgun said to me, "Do you own a set of drums?" And I said, "Yeah, I got a brand new set of Gretsch." "You do?" He said, "Would you bring them up so I could play them?" And I said, "Sure." So I brought him up one Saturday or Sunday, and I set him up. He played the hell out of them. And he said to me, "How'd you like to come and work with the band?" So I said, "Oh, are you kidding?" He said, "No." He said, "I'll let you play behind the singers. I'll do all the drum solos and some of the fancy stuff, and you can be like the second drummer in the band." I said, "Boy, that'd be great." Never realizing that it had nothing to do with my drumming. It was because I had a brand new set of drums. And my pay was $35 a week, and all the cabbage soup I could eat, because the guys in the band, we stayed in a 3-tenement flat, and usually we had a whole apartment for the band, and somebody in the band cooked. At that time was a cat named Hezi Yanez, and I forget the baritone player's name. And so they cooked all the time, and the food was great. So I played with them for about a month and a half, and then I got a notice that they were going on the road and I could go with them. So I went home and packed all my stuff. And my mother and father, "Where you going?" "I don't know, but I'm going with the band. We're going to play somewhere." "Oh, no, you can't do that." I gotta go. So off I went with the band. No car, just me and the band. And our first stop was Fall River, Massachusetts. And apparently Shotgun had played there before and had some trouble, because when the state police found out that we were there, they came in, made the band get packed, and they escorted us to the Massachusetts-Rhode Island line and told us that if they caught him in it again, they were going to bury him. And that was the last time that I saw Shotgun, because I left the band and went to work with somebody else. And the rest of the stories are coming.